Okay, great. So let's discuss how the audience formation in in a community takes place and what could be the right steps to do that, and the pros and cons of various platforms that come to existence, which we discussed and touched upon in the previous ones as well. All right, and I'll throw some tools at you so that you understand what proprietary and other mean. Okay, so first of all, right. Uh, if you have the relevance, right, that is your mission, etc., right, with a very active audience, right, the combination of two creates magic. All right, so that's the basic fundamental of which audience will work the best for you. Again, it is the mission that you have, and if you have an active audience in that platform that you've created as a community, start communicating, right, in a very active mode, right, and do things both online and offline. That is which will proliferate your entire existence of the platform, of your community. Okay, now with that in mind, what typically happens during the formation stages, right, it again follows when you break down a larger community membership. It again breaks down into a funnel mode, right? How does this work, right? Suppose you have 250,000 inactive members, right? uh, what does that mean, first of all? Okay, so members do not ever see distribution efforts, right? So what we're trying to do is we are trying to break down a 500,000 community members into what actually happens within a community, right? You realize at the end of the day, right, probably 0.4%, or let me put it, less than 1% are typically the active lot. Okay, but that 1% is good enough to proliferate things. Okay, so let's see that how that happens. So 250,000 inactive users, or rather members, do not ever see distribution efforts, right? So they will never go about talking about it, or do anything about your messaging or communication or whatever is happening in the community, right? uh, 200,000 not particularly active, right? So you're seeing about roughly 450,000 people not doing much. Maybe 200,000 do some, right? They might intermittently come in and do some sort of activities. And this is coming from some very large communities out there, right? As a part of the survey. Hence, I'm throwing it out to you so you understand how this participation happens. Now, 40,000, are somewhat engaged. So this is again part of the survey. What we saw is 250,000 are completely inactive. We saw 200,000 not particularly active. They come in not frequently, but at will, and just do some messaging or read something and get out. So these people never go about distributing their efforts to any of these platforms. That is wherever they are. Okay, so this is that. Then 40,000 do in some sort of engagement. Now they might be used, or they might be using themselves for distributing. They might talk about this platform somewhere else and vice versa, or talk to someone else to become participative here as a platform, right? So that's what this means. And so the frequently engaged ones would be about 5,000 of it, right? That's roughly about 1%, if you see, right? So 1% will be little frequently engaged compared to the others. 4,000 are super engaged, right? Then 1,000 perfect members and true fans. This is that 0.4%, right? These are the likely ones who will pass on the message and attract more people. So about roughly, you see, 5,000, which is about 1%, out of which just 0.4% are the ones which will typically attract other people. So this is an outcome of a survey specifically for community building activities. All right. And done by very legal credential activities through various platforms. Okay. Now, with that said, okay, what are the pros and cons that go into place for the platform that you create, right, or the platform that you use? Now, if you see the community platforms with our proprietary, that means you use these platforms to build your own community, like the Slack, the Mighty networks. You use Facebook also to build onto your systems, and maybe Discord and the others, right? The difference between the two is that suppose you use Mighty networks, right? You build your system onto your own, right? This doesn't interfere. Mighty networks' purpose is to provide you a platform to build your community, right? Facebook itself is a larger community which has built-in sub-communities which they allow to do, right? But they are governed and controlled by Facebook themselves, right? The difference between the two. So to quickly again address what we mentioned earlier, right? The pros and cons of managing your own respective community on an independent platform like Mighty Networks is that the pros consist of you having higher reach, right? With Facebook, it is so distributed, it will be difficult for you to do that. Okay, though you will have a focused niche, etc., but the outreach, right? Because you now are into a secluded niche which you have created for yourself, and now you're building your interface internally to go higher fire reach, fire reach to the higher ends, which you can go about proliferating. Okay. On the other hand, the vulnerability to algorithm shift. So now, if Facebook decides to change its algorithm by virtue of making fundamental changes, sometimes it ends up in losing your community itself, right? So that's causing an issue. That causes an issue primarily, right? Hence, you don't use such kind of community building exercise, which is controlled by somebody else, which can affect your systems in the future, okay, or even in the near future. So. So that's one of the key pros and cons which you want to take into account depending on what you want to use. Then the second is high shareability, right? On a common, you can build your own systems to go about doing this, whereas in a proprietary platform like Facebook, those systems are given the way it's supposed to be used, right? Okay. Then the pro in using like things like Mighty Network is good connect with native platform, right? That means since it's allowing you to build your own systems, etc. On top of that, it becomes easy to work with the native platform, right? In doing that. Whereas uh, for Facebook, etc., you're competing for attention, all right? Because everybody uses Facebook, everybody uses these elements to build their own specific, respective tribes out there. So it gets difficult, right? So with that said, tribe of Netflix cannot be touched by any of these guys, right? They will control, they will manage, they will do the needful, right? And they sell to them and they get inputs from them and they manage them completely. So that's how this works. Now, with that said, the only whatever con of sorts which would be a way I feel is that you have to build from scratch. That typically, though Mighty Networks etc. give you certain elements to do that very easily. Okay, so that's a kind of remedy to the con, but it like a Facebook is the click and tag and start doing things, right? Here you are built up with time. So that's how it is, right? Attracting and focusing, etc., becomes a little bit of a task over a period of time. But once done, it is the most effective way of doing it. Okay. So with that, the audience-related question that people might have for building community, etc., gets addressed. Okay. With that, let's jump to community-based sales. How can you use your community for sales activity? All right. So we'll go there in the next one. I'll see you there.